Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome to Culture Night.
Where each week we're doing fancy wine and watch movies that are in some way culturally significant. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sarah, and we are back for season 3, episode 6. It's honestly been a minute. We took a week off. With our bonus episode and everything, we were able to have everything go as normal, but we took a 1-week vacation and I'm feeling a little out of practice. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like it's been a long time. We did 3 episodes in a week, so we had time for our vacation, and then now it feels like it's been a year since we last podcasted, but
yes, we
I'm
apologize.
excited to get back into it. We
apologize for any awkwardness. We're just getting our feet back.
Can't be any worse than our first episode.
It's very true.
So I think that's all we really have for podcast business.
I have a podcast business.
You do.
We have hit 300 followers on Instagram. So
look out, world.
I know that was as of this afternoon. By the time this airs, it'll probably hopefully be a little bit more than that, but we're at 300.
So thanks everyone for subscribing and following along on our podcasting journey as we explore all these culturally significant movies.
And if you have not yet followed or subscribed, follow us on Instagram at Culture Night Pod, or subscribe on YouTube at Culture Night Pod, and rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, we're everywhere, I think. If we're not, then let us know somewhere, and we'll try to add that platform. So with that being said, what are we drinking this week?
Okay, I definitely thought I typed it in there. Sorry. This week we are drinking the 2019 Ducey Vineyards Zinfandel from Tobin James in Paso Robles.
All right, let's check out this in.
So we did the last episode for Music Man. We had the Fat Boy Zinfandel. So we're doing another Zinfandel, just a different vineyard. We'll see what our thoughts are.
It's like a cherry pie on the nose.
Yes, it was a lot sweeter than I was prepared for. I was expecting maybe spicier on the nose, but it's very sweet.
But like, I don't know, I'm getting more of like not like super sugary sweet, but like a cherry pie sweet. That's like almost not cinnamon, but like I don't even know how to describe it.
I kind of see where you're going for with cinnamon, but I don't think that it's exactly cinnamon.
Yeah. Well, let's give it a taste.
It's very fruity.
Pretty
Maybe
thick, but also smooth.
Fruity Pebbles.
I was going to go more with like Skittles.
Some artificial sweet flavor. A little alcohol forward.
It's like almost a slight sourness, but not like a bad sour. Just,
I see where you're going for it with the Skittles thing.
It's like this sourness of like a regular Skittle.
Yeah. I feel like also it's just so crazy because I think this
more.
is like the newest year wine. The newest vintage?
Have we not aged it enough? Have we grown accustomed to 2014 vintage wines?
We just really poorly aged a bunch of wine and drank it and got used to it, and now we're not used to the new stuff.
Yeah, that's about all I get from it. So I'm excited to see
If and when it opens up.
Exactly.
All right, so we don't have a behind the screens this week because we are just too excited to be back. We didn't get to it.
Yeah, a little out of sorts as we mentioned. So we'll get back in with the behind the screens next week.
But for now, we will start with Slept on It. The last movie that we watched was The Music Man from 2003 with Matthew Broderick and Kristen Chenoweth and Victor Garber, and I could go on and on, Molly Shannon.
Yeah, a pretty star-studded cast for such a mediocre movie, or bad, I would even say.
Yeah.
I mean, I gave it a 2.7 and you gave it a 5. Would you change your rating having slept on it? I mean, I know you've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
But watching it with fresh eyes.
Is it great? No. It's really hard for me to bump it down a whole lot, though, or at all, because it is a nostalgia thing for me. And I think that not for everybody for this particular movie, but so many people have these movies that they love that are dumb and that are not great. But you watched it at this particular time in your life, and it was just something that is nostalgic for you, and that I think has to be part of cultural significance in some way. Yeah. Because that's what makes a lot of these movies so popular is... oh man, we all really latched onto this. And do a lot of people latch onto The Music Man from the Wonderful World of Disney? No.
I think it's also kind of a glimpse into who the big-ish names were of that time. I mean, some of them obviously are still acting and were famous like some of before that. But I think kind of seeing what that ensemble cast was right there just felt extremely 90s.
It was very time capsule. Like, oh, I remember when all these people were in everything. That I think I appreciate that too, of this whole musical genre too, because it appears or seems to be that like we watch a movie and it's like, wow, this is a huge star-studded cast, and then they were all popular at this time, and then we start another one. It's another big star-studded cast that I feel like these have had the most stacked casts of any of the movies we've watched so far.
With Sin City, it's like who was like the mid to early 2000s, like who was that like star-studded cast, and then this was more of like the 90s, kind of another example of an ensemble that it is kind of cool seeing just that little snapshot just in that. Still, just I can't give the movie any higher rating than a 2.7. It just, and
I respect that.
I don't think I'm going to watch it again. I didn't really like the songs. I mean, I know you've been quoting the Trouble in the River City for years now, and I get it now, but I still just don't love the movie, the plot, the songs. And
I appreciate that too, because I feel like for me, I either love the songs from a musical or I really hate them. And I also have a hard time too when I go into a musical and I don't know any of the songs. I'm automatically like, I don't like this because I can't sing along, or I can't like bop along to the music because I don't know how it goes or what to expect. That I have, like, once I'm like obsessive with a musical, then I want to watch it 1,000 times.
It just makes it so much more enjoyable when you like. It's almost just like enhancing like a already good CD album. It's like. Or are we dating ourselves by calling it a CD album?
You're dating yourself. I didn't say that.
It's like, you already find like a band you like, you listen to the whole album. And with this, it's kind of like now you add a whole like story and extra experience to it. This, I feel like I didn't really like the music. So it's like a, non-starter almost.
Yep. I totally get that. So now I guess we move on to our deep dives. And I did actually like dive deep into some stuff. I tried to find behind the scenes facts on this. Like I have the last few weeks, nothing. I could not find. It's almost like this movie didn't exist, or they're trying to make it seem like it didn't exist. Cause I could not find.
It's not on Disney Plus,
right?
We had to watch some bootleg version on YouTube,
right? It was just very interesting trying to search for stuff. And the only things I could find were these horrible reviews of it. And this whole article was talking about how this movie was about to premiere and they had seen an advanced copy and it was terrible. But this is on the heels of Chicago, which was just nominated for a bunch of Oscars or whatever. And it was interesting because we just watched that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no one was too impressed with this.
I mean, when you compare it right up against Chicago, I can see why it's kind of like let's go ahead and just sweep this under the rug.
Yeah. So my first deep dive is into The Wonderful World of Disney, since this did premiere, I believe it was February 16th of 2003 on The Wonderful World of Disney. And I know that has a pretty deep history in the Disney world. No pun intended.
Yeah, Disney World. Not that Disney World.
Yeah, the Disney, I don't even know what to call it. It's something.
Cinematic universe, I think is what they call them these days.
Oh, that sounds good. I like that. So the show originally premiered in 1954 and has aired on several networks with several different names and different types of formats. The original name for the first iteration of this was Walt Disney's Disneyland, and he was obviously big into films, and he was one of very few people at the time that was breaking into television, and he was really using this show to help finance Disneyland, was his mindset behind it. And the original show was kind of giving a preview to the world of what Disneyland was going to be, and it had like little previews of each of the different lands, Frontierland, Adventureland, all that kind of stuff, and was really just Walt telling everybody.
So like kind of giving a backstory to like all of the different lands within Magic Kingdom or in Disneyland, which is also very similar to that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of that before, and if we can find that anywhere, I would love to watch that.
Yeah, really cool background there, if that is indeed the truth.
And then the show, The Wonderful World of Disney, has only ever had two hosts, Walt Disney himself and Michael Eisner, who was hosting it in the 90s, which is what I fondly remember from my childhood days. And it kind of came and went in a bunch of different ways, but the way I think we know it from our childhood is it was returned in 1991, and it was for Disney's like special airings on the big name networks. So they were anything that was straight to DVD, or they wanted to re-show some of their like big names. It was, I guess, to try to get more hype back into the Disney World. I gotta stop saying Disney World.
I mean, he called it Disneyland, so I think you're forgiven there.
Very true. And it wasn't until 1997 when ABC gave it a regular time slot, and it was I think it was Saturday for a while, and then it moved to Sundays. But I mean, I remember it was a big thing, and we would sit down and watch it
on ABC. Yeah, I remember like we had to finish our dinner early so we could all get ready and be in front of the TV in time to watch these.
Yeah, even sometimes we would like kind of wait and eat. We would lay out a big comforter on the floor in front of the TV and like eat like nachos on the floor or have pizza, and it was just kind of this event to watch every week, which is pretty cool.
The stressful event of being like, we gotta eat dinner early, and everyone kind of scrambling. But
very true. But also, like, wouldn't Walt Disney have loved that? Be like, oh, this family is like, or like they have got to finish eating dinner so they can watch it, or they're gonna have this special event. Like, I think that's what he wanted from something like this.
But isn't it crazy thinking back to when we had to like really scramble to watch like movies like at a specific time, like premiere them, because nowadays everything is streaming. It just kind of comes out like that day, or you go to the theater and watch it. It's really only sports that really, it seems like now has like
sports
a premiere
was the first thing
time,
that popped in
like
my
an
head.
actual time that everyone's going to sit down and watch something together.
That's crazy. Kind of sad.
I guess maybe like political debates, but like I feel like even those have kind of
let's not rush through dinner.
Interesting with the whole news cycle.
And then my last note on Wonderful World of Disney is that Disney's CEO, Michael Eisner, formed the Disney Telefilms production company by 1995 so that they could produce original films for the Wonderful World of Disney. So they kind of created their own separate branch of the Disney company to make these made-for-TV movies. And there are countless of them. I don't know if Telefilms specifically produced The Music Man. I meant to go back and look into that, and I didn't. But they were trying to produce more content for this show. So I remember it fondly. I believe it did say that there is now some kind of version on Disney Plus. We'll have to look into it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, cheers to the Wonderful World of Disney. You brought me wonderful childhood memories.
Yeah, definitely a good memory from like it's a family event of everyone getting together and watching that. Yeah, I feel like that's exactly what Walt Disney like really wanted.
It makes me think of Carousel of Progress, of the whole whole family
that's
like
exactly
gather
what
around.
I was picturing. Yeah.
Oh man, Walt's dream. Okay, and then my last deep dive is just a quick one because obviously Harold Hill comes to River City and he is warning the town of the trouble of having a pool table in the city and like trying to put fear in everybody. And so I figured let's learn the difference between pool and billiards. So we talked a lot last week about pool and pool tables. I had one growing up. We've played pool various places, but the actual like ball and stick games date back as early as 1340s, as whereas they have like records of it. It originated obviously as outdoor sports that was brought inside. There's a whole long Wikipedia history of it. This is just the big points. But billiards is played on a table without pockets, and the game only has 3 balls, which are red, white with a spot, and white without a spot. So I think you have to like hit them in a certain order or do certain things. There are no pockets in billiards.
Is it just 3 balls, like total? Interesting.
But to me, billiards always reminds me of Clue in the billiards room.
No, I just always think of it like as being almost interchangeable with pool.
I thought that for a while, and then I was informed it was very different, and I was like, oh, sorry. And I never knew how it was different.
When I heard it was different, I just immediately imagined the bumper pool table that my grandparents had in their basement and just think of like that as being like, oh, that's what billiards is. And pool is just without all the bumpers in the way. But yeah, I never really thought about like what it actually is.
So maybe we'll have to watch some videos or learn more about it.
I just want to know why one is like safer and one is a slippery slope to like running like street gangs with boys.
Right. Got trouble. And then pool involves a table with 6 pockets. You need 15 balls. But I don't think that doesn't include the white cue ball.
4, 5, 6. I don't know. Yeah.
The article said 15 balls.
Make a triangle, it have to be 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5.
But some people play with just 9. I have played versions with 9. I've played we had a book. We played a lot of various pool games, but you have to have the cue ball for that one too. So pool has pockets, billiards does not. That's the big difference. And it was another one called like snooker or something. Is a third variation.
There's some really cool YouTube videos of guys playing snooker.
Oh, Lord. You know what our YouTube history is going to look like soon.
Very cool in the sense of like the how it's made videos are also cool. Like it's not like super riveting, but more just like kind of watch it and you're like,
can't stop.
Yeah.
Interesting. So there was trouble in River City because of this pool table, but now we know the difference.
Yeah.
So that wraps up my research on Music Man. I'm sorry I couldn't find any behind the scenes. I love the juicy gossip.
Yeah,
but
I guess I just want to find like a more definitive reason of why it's like been like exiled almost from like the whole Disney
right
world.
There's a story there.
But speaking of movies and soundtracks being like stuck in your head all the time, I've heard that the movie we're watching tonight is one that's very singable and very memorable. So I'm excited to finally hear it.
Are you ready to
Yes.
share what we're watching tonight?
Tonight we are watching Rent from 2005.
I'm very excited.
It is rated PG-13, but let's hop into our time machine back to 2005. This is also the same year as Season 2, Episode 6, Sin City. So again, the top 3 movies released that year were Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and War of the Worlds. So 3 huge blockbuster movies. So I'm not surprised that this is not in the top 3.
Definitely. Sorry, We Belong Together.
Yeah, the top 3 songs that year are We Belong Together by Mariah Carey, Holla Back Girl by Gwen Stefani, and Let Me Love You by Mario. Again, just a bunch of
all
bangers.
3 bangers.
Great year for music.
Yes, it was a great year. Yeah.
So, that being said, have you seen Rent before?
I don't think I've seen it. I think I've seen parts of it. But I feel like and maybe I did watch it one time, but I was not paying super close attention, but I'm pretty sure I've not actually seen it before. I'm familiar with the songs.
I'm familiar with like a song, and maybe I've heard more, and people are like, oh, that's from Rent. And I'm just like, okay. But I've definitely not seen it before. And all I know about the movie is there's that one song about like minutes in some time or something.
You don't even know how many minutes?
I never bothered to listen.
Oh my gosh. I think I know at least 2 off the top of my head. I feel like I'll probably be familiar with maybe 3 or 4 of them. But
Seasons of Love, is that what it's called?
Seasons of Love,
okay.
yes.
Yeah. So at least I know the name of the song. But only time I've ever really like heard the songs was driving to school when I was back in high school. My best friend's sister loved singing along to it and playing it, and she would play it in the car in the mornings. And that's like the only times I've really actually heard it. Otherwise, I know nothing. I don't even know what it's about. I assume with Rent, maybe it's about like video rentals. No, just kidding. It's probably about like rent for like paying rent for an apartment.
I'm so glad you didn't commit to that prediction. That's terrible. I believe it is about a group of friends in New York City.
Trying to pay rent.
Yes. I feel like this is such a hard balance of like how much do I share that I think I know that's gonna like, is it gonna ruin things for you? I do know Idina Menzel is in it.
Ooh.
So if I'm incorrect, I'll cut
Young
that out.
Elsa. All
yes. Right. But I'm very excited to watch this. And back to quick Seasons of Love story. I love that song, listen to it all the time, have it memorized. But my most fond memory of it is singing it at the top of my lungs with our friend in the car driving back to college for a friend reunion weekend. And we took lots of selfie videos of us just like singing this song and harmonizing with it. And I just get such fun memories every time
See, that's why I'm more excited about this, because it seems much more singable than last week.
Yes.
So have some medium high hopes for this movie.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited. Especially because I feel like I've seen almost all of these musicals so far that I'm ready to jump into this one. So I think without further ado, it's time for Rent.
Let's go.
Cheers.
Welcome back.
We're back. That was Rent.
Yeah.
We'll save our thoughts. We always want to jump right into talking about it, but we'll save our thoughts.
Yeah. Let's start with the wine first. Get that out of the way.
Yes. Give us a wine scale.
So the wine scale is a 0 to 10 scale. 10 being the best. However, the wines we drink are all very, very nice wines. So the scale is heavily weighted. So a low score does not necessarily mean it is a bad wine. We're trying to rate these all just relative to each other. That being said, I give this wine a 4.2.
You're swaying me.
No, give your score.
My score was a 6.1.
6.1?
Because I liked it less than last week, but I still thought it was good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, they're all
great wines.
I just don't see myself like being like, oh, you have to get this particular one. It was fine. I felt like I got more like almost like fruit punch from it towards the end when I was like really thinking of it.
Yeah, there was that. The first tastes were very like sour, but like sweet, like artificial sweet. I don't know. It was not what I was expecting at all.
I mean, it got less sour, like I said, from the whole Skittles flavor. It went more to like a fruit punch kind of sweetness. The the bottle does talk about it being intense and jammy fruit that signifies juicy fruit.
Jammy.
I didn't get as much jam from this.
I did, I think, more on the first couple tastes than anything else.
I don't know. It was more tart to me in the beginning, and then just went more to like a fruit punch towards the end. But still good.
I enjoyed it.
But about a 4.2 good on a scale of heavily weighted 0 to 10 scale. Now let's move on to the movie rating on a 0 to 10 scale. How would you rate Rent?
I am sticking with my wine score of 6.1.
Oh man, doubling up. I am going to give it a 7.3.
What?
Yeah, I honestly like.
I thought you were going to be judgy of my 6.1 being so high.
No, I mean, I didn't like it at first. And honestly, it wasn't until the last hour or so that it really kind of started growing on me because it seemed kind of lost at first. And I was really following what was going on. But by the end, I started to kind of really appreciate it. And I do rate the musicals a little different than a regular movie because normally I'm rating on things like, A, how much do I enjoy it? B, how likely am I to like rewatch it? C, how likely am I to just pick it up if it's on and continue it? And D, just like overall how like culturally significant and quotable, like do I think that it is, how like recurring is it going to be? With musicals, it's a bit different in like how much did I enjoy the soundtrack and the songs, and how much am I going to find myself singing them, or would I like to listen to the soundtrack again? And I don't know how much I want to listen to the soundtrack like just straight through as much, but I did really enjoy it, and it was fun, different, not what I expected. I just found myself kind of like I the last like hour or half hour or so, I kept thinking of like a score in my mind, and I just kind of settled on like about a 7.3.
No, I appreciate that. And sorry, just looking at the faces of all the actors, I was like, okay, it's Mark, it's Mimi, it's Collins, but I was staring at Roger for a really long time, and I kind of got lost in the middle of what you were saying because he does not look the same. Everybody else more or less looks exactly the same, but he threw me off a little bit. Sorry, Roger.
Yeah. He, I guess with the long hair and everything, he just looks very, very different.
I mean, I'm like, oh, it's Roger. I can see it, but caught me off guard for a second. Sorry. I was definitely paying attention to you. But I do agree that the first hour, it felt kind of lost and it was just a lot going on. And this is a movie where there is definitely more singing to dialogue ratio. And personally, I find that very hard to follow, and it is not my favorite type of musical. And we probably should have tried to put the subtitles on to follow it.
I thought about it towards like the middle, but then I started kind of connecting dots of like what was actually going on because it was hard to kind of follow a lot of it. But I did make a note that, especially in the beginning, I thought it was all words being sung. There were a couple scenes where there was actually just some regular dialogue, but it was like a 98 to 2 like type of singing to just spoken dialogue.
Yeah, but I don't know, it as horribly tragic and scary as a lot of this movie is, it also just still leaves me with this comforting this season of love in my soul. And I don't know if it's just like, being at that time in your life where you're with your friends, and it did give me some Friends vibes of like in New York City, and it's about that time in your life where you aren't married and have kids of your own. You're just kind of, your friends are your family kind of vibe. And I mean, you really get that family vibe from all of them, that they just come together over the course of this year and just establish this like bond that's pretty incredible. Yeah,
I definitely did feel some similarities to Friends for sure in it. And a couple more that I'll get to later in my notes.
Yes, well, let's move on to the rest of our questions.
So the next up on our questionnaire is the movie description. I'm going to kind of struggle with the description because there was just so much going on. Some friends living.
Don't you just struggle with every description though? It's like hard to summarize a movie on the spot.
Yeah, some of them are fairly easy. This one's a bit more difficult because I honestly, like, for a while, just felt like I had no idea what was going on.
Okay, sorry, continue.
Some friends living in New York City connect over, I guess, a shared issue, protest over the rent in the city, hence the name. Become or form a much deeper bond and friendship, and some even love in this season. Takes place over about a year, almost exactly, I guess, and just kind of follows along this ragtag group of friends.
Well done. I I can already tell that we're going to get cut off on the description on the TV, so be prepared. Ooh, this rock opera, already off to a great start.
Yeah, I can see that.
This rock opera tells the story of 1 year in the life of a group of bohemians struggling in late 1980s East Village, New York, USA. Oh, God, we're specific to USA.
Someone was trying to get their word counted on this one.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry I have such a hard time with this. The film centers around Mark and Roger, two roommates. While a tragedy has made Roger numb to new experiences, Mark begins capturing their world through his attempts to make a personal movie. In the year that follows...
Are you able to expand it? Press up.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
In the year that follows...
that follows, they and their friends deal with love, loss, and working together. And you're totally going to leave, like, you're going to specifically name Mark and Roger, but leave out the entire rest of the cast?
Okay, this description, much like the movie, spent a lot of time on the first 2/3, and then the last third was real rushed.
Agreed, 100%. It set up a lot of really specific details in the first 2 sentences, and then just pittered out at the end.
Yeah.
Not great.
But honestly, like I said, feels very reflective of the movie itself.
But yes, like in the year that follows, they and their friends deal with love, loss, and working together. That's a good summary.
Was this movie what you expected?
Yes.
No. I expected it to be, this was much darker than I expected. I thought it was going to be much lighter and cheery.
I
didn't expect the rock portion of it. I guess I should have, because I think on one of the types of musicals list, I think it listed Rent as a rock one, which I just didn't feel right, but very much was.
I knew that it dealt with AIDS, and I knew that there was a lot of the like LGBTQ, like that aspect of it. Like I knew there was a lot of like heavier stories to this, but I didn't want to tell you going into it because I knew you didn't know, and so I was like, how much do I say? How much do I not say? So it was, and a group of friends in New York is what I said in the before show, but
I guess knowing like that one song, which was kind of lighthearted and happy. I feel like I was blindsided on the whole like depth of this one, as much, not quite to the extent that I was with Handmaid's Tale, where I thought that was going to be a fun, like silly, like Downton Abbey type type movie or type show. This one definitely kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah, I had something to say, but I forgot.
And come back to that if you think of it. How well did it age?
I think it aged well.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you're taking place in a specific time period, it did feel like some early or late 90s, early 2000s like bled into this, even though it takes place in 89. Just so much of it kind of felt like a early 2000s movie.
Yes.
It came out in 2005. But otherwise, thought it aged just fine. Again, given the fact that it's easier to age period pieces.
Yeah, we've been like on a roll with period pieces lately.
Yeah.
I do remember what I was going to say. You were caught off guard by like the one song that you knew was very lighthearted, and obviously Seasons of Love was the one song I really knew from this, and I also love Take Me or Leave Me. But I think actually sitting down and watching the whole movie start to finish makes me more appreciate that like it is actually takes place over the course of a year, and that's the whole like 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? Like it is literally a 1 year story to tell, and makes me appreciate that aspect of the story a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely makes more sense once it connects that. It did feel like the first 2 years of the movie took place in 3 days. And then the last third, I mean, it was maybe even more than like that took place in 3 days, and the rest of it filled on the entire rest of the year. Yeah,
I was trying to like keep track. I'm like, he's in Santa Fe now, and then they're doing this, and like this, and I was like being like, but wait, it's only been 1 year, and just trying to like piece that whole timeline together, because so much of the movie was spent on the first like couple of days between Christmas and New Year's.
And I think they could have like spread it out a bit more. Some of the stories didn't need to necessarily take place in that particular like 3 day span. They could have spread that out over months.
Yeah. I mean, I knew there was like the death and the loss part. So I was like, oh, it's like, how do you measure a year? Like the years of your life, like kind of that more overarching thing, but I didn't know it like actually specifically meant the year of this movie.
Yeah. Could this movie be made today?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. I don't see any reason why not. Again, taking place in a specific time period for sure. I think if it were made today, I think it would have much more of an ensemble cast of like big names that they were like either dubbing or auto-tuning. This obviously like Idina Menzel, Taye Diggs, like a couple, Rosario Dawson, a couple big names in there, but I think it would have been much more like we're going all in on the names and then making them sing better, as opposed to these were, I think, most of these were good theater actors and singers.
So my fun fact that I discovered whilst watching the movie is that, so there's 8 main characters. 6 of the 8 were from the original 1996 debut of Rent on Broadway. So most of them like originated these roles and like grew with them. And Tracy Thomas, who played Joanne, was a replacement because the actress who played her on Broadway was deemed too old for the remake, because between 96 and 95 is almost 10 years. I think she was like 50 by the time the movie came out, that they were like
96 and 05.
Yeah, you're right. Like she had aged too much from the original production. And then Rosario Dawson's character was pregnant when they were filming the movie, so she couldn't be in it. But I was thinking about it while I was watching it, knowing that, you know, these 2 characters were plugged into this group that had been doing this since 1996, that I felt like I would feel really out of place to jump in and be like, oh, let me just step in here and be this person, when you've had someone else doing this with you since the beginning for 10 years almost.
Yeah, it's almost like the Power Rangers being replaced in season 2.
I have had enough Power Rangers over the last week in our house.
Oh, I gotta love it.
No, never enough. Just kidding.
Did they say the title of the movie in the movie?
Yes.
They almost like set a record for the movies we've seen of saying the title in the movie
in the first 5 minutes.
Right. It, like very, very early on, I was like, oh my God, if they keep this up, they're going to like blast through like the theoretical limit of how many times you can say a name of a movie in a movie.
I'm really sorry we didn't keep count.
It would have been impossible in that first song. They kind of tailed off towards the rest of it, but it did become a kind of a somewhat recurring theme of the whole.
I mean, the internet's a crazy place. I'll see if I can find a count by next week.
Someone has it.
I mean, right? I feel like someone out there has to know.
If not, you can probably find the script somewhere and you can do
Yeah.
Did the title fit the movie?
No.
I think no as well. If I come up
it's an iconic title because you know of this, that like this is out there and exists and people love it, but
it's like a catalyst towards the beginning. Fine. I can think of a better title.
You can go for it.
Seasons of Love.
Yeah.
Like,
I figured that's what it'd be.
Easiest one. Other ones that I was thinking of was just like, New York City, 1989 or something. Obviously it kind of or 1990, I guess it took place
mostly in
1990.
I don't know. The first 2/3 of the movie was the week between Christmas.
Most of the year they measured was 1990. Things like that, or just like The Big Apple, something like that. But I think just calling it Seasons of Love would be the easiest one and make much more sense than just Rent.
Yeah.
Rent seems like a working title, but
I agree. But I also kind of feel like, knowing what I know of the show Friends, like the original title was Friends Like These, and it was, about literally, I think the plug for that show was it's about that time in your life where your friends are your family. And I just get so much of that from this too, that I'm like, obviously you can't take Friends and make the title of this, but I don't know. I just feel like something really simple, like Friends, or I don't know.
Yeah. But at the same time, like there's also shows like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia that like have very long names that also are successful. It's like, I think someone just decided that movies or shows need to have like really short names, but you can always shorten things. Like It's Always Sunny, you can always shorten to just Sunny. Like people will call it the shorter name, anyways. But I think maybe with someone calling it Seasons of Love, they maybe might have lost out on a lot of like guys that might have seen it because they think, oh, it's just some stupid cheesy love story. But I think it would have been a better title overall.
I agree. Kind of like All That Jazz with Chicago.
Yeah, for sure. Were there any actors that went on to do bigger things? Well, Idina Menzel became a Disney princess and queen, which is like very hard to do. But
yeah, I mean, whatever anybody else did is like nothing
really top that.
compared to that.
Taye Diggs in a lot of things, Rosario Dawson in a lot of things. That's all.
Idina Menzel and Taye Diggs were married for a while, and they have a child together.
Did not know that.
Seasons of Love,
right? And then Sarah Silverman was in a odd role. Like she was in it it was not in it for very much, and I feel like she was already a pretty big name in 05. She actually also is, I think, technically a Disney princess from Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, that's right. She's not a Disney princess. She is like a princess adjacent. There are categories of princess. There are official princesses.
The Candy King. I don't know. Well, I guess she's not his daughter. maybe.
No, I mean, Disney has there are some people who should be princesses who are like, even Anna and Elsa, I think, have just recently been adopted into the Disney princesses. Disney is wild.
You need like an animal sidekick, which I guess Olaf is one for Elsa, but yeah.
Or Sven.
Yeah, but that's Kristoff's sidekick.
True.
But anyways, yeah.
We got sidetracked very quickly there. I mean, I think most of them are big Broadway stars, but I did see
was, but then also became
whoever played Collins. Jesse L. Martin was in NYPD Blue. I loosely Wikipedia'd all these people. And I can't remember, of course, anything, but most of them I think are known for their Broadway.
Yeah. Yeah, if they went on to bigger things, most of them either already done big things or were just more on that stage, if you will. What impact do you think this movie had on pop culture? I mean, I just know people love the Seasons of Love song, no pun intended, and that song at least gets sung a lot or quoted. Most people know at least the beginning to it. And I just have heard Rent as being like a great like must see like on Broadway show.
I am interested to deep dive the actual like cultural significance of this between this week and next week, because I do think it had a big impact. I think, covering the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
Okay. I just made sure I used the right word. The whole AIDS epidemic and the LGBTQ thing. I think a lot of that was something that was not represented it came out in 96. We were starting to get there a little bit more, but I think that probably has a big meaning for a lot of people.
The theater show coming out that early, I thought this seemed very, I don't know if progressive is the right word, but for its time of covering a lot of the gay and lesbian relationships in this, given that I feel like Brokeback Mountain came out around the same time, I've noted about that, and that was so controversial.
It was.
But this, with having like two at least gay relationships in it, it seems like I don't remember there being an outcry about that.
I don't really remember the movie coming out, which I think is weird because I think for so many of these, I'm like, oh, I remember when this came out, or I remember people talking about it, even though I didn't see it. I don't really remember the movie coming out as much, but
yeah, I don't remember the movie, but I do remember everyone singing the songs. So I just more remember the soundtrack being so popular. Oh my God, I love the Rent soundtrack.
It's a pretty good soundtrack. I have notes on that too. I'll get there.
And the last question being, do you feel cultured after watching it? I for sure do.
Yes.
I've been meaning to see this for a very long time, and I'm glad that I now have a lot better understanding of the title song, or not title song, but the main song and the whole rest of the storyline behind it, which I had no idea about. And I just feel silly for not knowing way more about it.
Yeah. I am definitely glad that I knew a lot going into it. I feel like I had to have at least maybe seen it once before, having watched it now. But it's not one where it's like, oh, I know exactly what's going on or what's going to happen next. I forgot a lot about it, that I'm glad I've seen it again. And I mean, I think, of the culturally significant movies we've watched, this is definitely one of the top ones for sure.
Surprisingly way up there. I mean, I've been excited to watch this for a long time, but was blown away with it much more than expected.
Very, very good movie. Now I feel like I already got to have to pump my score up. Well, I'll sleep on it and I'll come up with a new one next week. Tune in next week to see how I change my score. It's going to go up.
All right. So
I will go first with my notes because I believe you went first last week.
Oh, go for it then. I can't remember. It's been so long. So go for it.
It's been a weird couple of weeks with the podcast. So I will start things off. First of all, it's a Chris Columbus film.
That's my very first note as well.
I mean, like it was one of the first things on the screen, and I was like, oh my God, Chris Columbus. I had no idea that he directed this. I feel like he's been involved in a lot of things.
Home Alone, Harry Potter films,
Harry Potter,
so many things, but I did not feel a big like Chris Columbus vibe in a lot of this.
I honestly
know like what that means.
I honestly forgot it towards the end. I feel like some directors like really have a vibe, and I didn't get
Christopher
that.
Nolan one.
I did not get that from him, and I was like really excited at the beginning, and then I honestly forgot about it until I was looking out of my notes.
And I think a lot of the movies we've seen that he's directed have been much more like kid films, or at least geared towards that. And this was very different.
This is not a kid film.
And it was a musical and just so much different that he did an amazing job for being outside of what we at least consider his type or his stereotype.
And to take over a Broadway show that's been around for 9 years at the time and bringing almost the entire cast to the movie, I mean, I feel like that's a really hard job and it's very well done. Good work, Chris Columbus. I feel like that would have been a really tough challenge.
I guess the most like impact I see, or at least like fingerprints I see of his on the movie, is the opening scene.
Yes.
But I don't know if that's just how the actual like theater production.
Oh my God, are we going to go start seeing Broadway shows together?
Maybe. I don't know if that's how that also goes, but it felt kind of very much like I can see that being his impact on it if that is not how the Broadway show opens.
But I can also, one of my further notes down is, or maybe I didn't actually make note of it. One of my other notes is like from the second it started, I'm like, okay, I can see how this is a Broadway show. Like I can see how they would stage this, or I can see how they would stage that. And I felt like more than any of the other musicals that we've seen so far, I've been like imagining what the theater production of this would look like.
That's what I do with a lot of these, especially towards the end when there was like the whole Santa Fe aspect of it. I'm like, how would they portray this in a theater production? Things that seem like they.
Oh, I very much imagine the backdrop coming in and the like weird fake mountains and him standing up there, but like a split screen with New York City over here. I mean, I could see all of it.
Yeah. And those I feel like would be very fun to play in a theater production where it's like people are quickly changing the set behind you. You're changing outfits. So you're sitting here like all that while the song is going on and trying to not break continuity. I can see that being very fun.
Yeah. And
stressful, but fun.
But then there were certain scenes where I was like, okay. And then they were able to take this scene from the show, the Broadway show, and expand. They could kind of walk around a little bit more and have a little bit more fun backdrops. And I could just like kind of see how they, I mean, having not seen this on Broadway, I could imagine what, you know, a theater production of this would look like and how they were able to kind of like expand and had to like shift things based on making an actual film from it.
Yeah. Trying to like portray the passage of time, I feel like is difficult. And I think it kind of helped that they didn't have to show too much passing of time in the beginning, but then towards the end, you have to kind of quickly show things of like, oh, here's New Year's, here's this, here's Halloween, here's the next Christmas.
Yeah. And I think even to the soundtrack of this to me was the most like theater production. I could imagine this on a stage listening. I can imagine the chorus of people trying to sing this. Like I got the most like I'm sitting in a theater watching this vibes just from the soundtrack and how it was done.
Yeah.
Which is good because I think that's, I mean, I think of this, that we've seen a couple that were like movies and then Broadway shows, and there's been a lot of like weird order to these things, but.
Or at least much more known for the movie versus the Broadway show.
Yeah.
And this I feel like is, you watch this and you know it was a Broadway show first, for sure.
Definitely. And then I love how it, like, I feel like there was another one where it started off with like this one song we knew, Singing in the Rain. It started off where it was just Singing in the Rain. And I was like, oh man. And then this was like Seasons of Love. There's the one song we know.
That is my second notice. Oh, cool. The one song I know, a la Singing in the Rain. But also throwback to also the whole first season where like, okay, cool. The movie opens and the one iconic scene is in the first 5 minutes.
Very true. Very true.
It's like that, but in a musical form.
Yep.
That it was very much like, okay, am I going to know anything else the rest of the movie? Because the one thing I know is right here.
Yep. I was not prepared for it to be in the beginning. So clear that maybe I haven't actually seen the thing in its entirety. I thought it was at the end, but I do love how it was done though, with them just like on the stage with the spotlights. Like I thought that was very beautifully done because it is such a vocal, like it highlights the vocalists and their harmonies. And I mean, oh, I just love it so much.
But it did feel very similar to Singing in the Rain, where they just start with that, and then later the song comes in much later in the movie.
That chord progression. Oh, it's so good. I love it so much. And then on that same note, what a fun song to film. Just standing in this empty theater with the spotlight on you, and you're just like, and you know that those people can sing. If they're Broadway singers, like they can sing. And to just be like, okay, stand on the stage and just sing it. Just like with everything in your body.
But they're probably belting it out and probably like a great rendition, but all that was then re-sung in a studio.
100%.
Which is kind of the crazy part of it.
100%. But I just imagine being a theater performance to just have to stand there and just be like, just sing it with your whole entire body. And they were like, all right, done.
But that is one thing I kind of like miss or at least respect about movies like Oklahoma, where it was not re-sung in a studio, to be like, you got to get someone who could project, you know, in the scene that you were actually like in all the surrounding environment, get them to project and have it still sound good in all that. Very, very cool.
Definitely.
Much more difficult. Definitely had to cast specifically for that. Whereas nowadays you can cast basically anyone to make them sound good.
100%. I do love that they brought most of the original cast back though. I think that makes you appreciate a lot more of their talent.
Yeah.
As opposed to just being like, oh, it's just a bunch of big names up there singing these classic songs. Like these are the people that sang it to start with. Like that means a lot to them.
Yeah.
And then Rent. The Rent song has a very Broadway feel when they're singing Rent and they're on the balconies and they're singing over their I guess the balcony, the fencing, and I could just see that. We've already talked about it, but that first song where I was like, all right, we're just jumping right into it. This is definitely a theater production that they've turned into a movie.
Yeah, felt very, very intense.
Except I was like, did they light things on fire in the theater? Probably not. How did they portray that? And then my brain quickly lost.
LEDs around.
Yeah. in 1996?
Yeah, maybe not. Throwing some Game Boys around.
Okay, my next note is Rosario Dawson. She was also in Sin City, season 2, episode 6, which came out the same year.
Oh, great.
So she had a busy year, name, and 2 big name movies too. Obviously not the biggest of 2005 because 2005 was a big year, but Rent and Sin City are 2 pretty culturally significant movies.
I'm sure she made a good chunk of change that year.
And honestly, I don't know that I could have imagined her face prior to the last 2 months of our lives.
Yeah, but now I know 2 huge movies.
But but I feel like she was so good in both of the roles, similar roles.
Yeah.
But different enough where I was like, man, I like her. Good work, Rosario Dawson. And my next note is Angel's wig. Mad Velma Kelly from Chicago vibes. That short bob with the bangs. I was like, that feels familiar. It feels familiar. And then all of a sudden my brain was like, Chicago. There it is. That black.
He wore it so that people would realize that it was him that was dancing and not a body double, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm not gonna have the long hair. I'm gonna have the short hair so that they would know.
Throwback to the Chicago.
You are correct. Yep. Him and Catherine Zeta-Jones are same wavelength.
Like mine.
And then my next note is interesting method of protesting by Maureen, where she's having this protest. So I'm imagining in the streets with signs and stuff. And it's like this stage performance with lights and this moon that drops up and down, and then all these TVs that have her face on it she's making all these weird faces. And I'm like, this is your method? I think you even said slam poetry.
Yeah. It felt very much like a slam poetry thing, but also just the amount of effort that it would take to coordinate that. Whereas nowadays it'd be very easy to take a bunch of TVs, cast one thing to them, and but then to film all that, cut it up, get it all synchronized, and
have the right amount of pause between. I was like, this doesn't feel realistic with the TVs.
Yeah.
For that time period, 1989. Was there just blank TVs playing in between? What if there was mad applause? I don't know. I thought that was weird and didn't track timing wise of when this movie was made or set. And then my next note is a round of applause for anybody that was in charge of set design and construction. Every single song, which we've noted is 90% of the movie, someone's dancing on something. A table, a bar, a pool table.
Trouble.
That's my next note. We're coming to it.
In the big city.
They're dancing on something in every scene, and I'm like, I don't know that I would just jump up on this coffee table in their apartment, or this end table, or that bar, or that table that we were eating dinner at. And there were some scenes where there was all 8 of them on one table, and I'm like, are we sure we trust this? Even
if someone told me you could trust it, I still wouldn't trust it.
Right. I appreciate that. I'm singing this and I'm just going to jump up on this. Oh, when Maureen was on that table at her engagement party with the ice sculpture, I was like, are we sure is that stable enough? It was very stressful for me that I just had to give a shout out to anybody behind the scenes that was in charge of that, because everybody was up and down dancing on all the things. So everything was stable. Hopefully nobody was hurt in the making of this movie, but
we'll never know.
We might know. We'll do some Googling. And then my last note is Maureen on the pool table, which we've already alluded to.
Not a billiards table.
It was not a billiards table. It was a pool table. But, we talked last week about how every pool table that I've encountered, everyone's like, you do not put drinks on this. You have to be super careful with it. And she just jumps right up on there. And I was like, she has high heels on. Please don't touch it with her. And she did. She didn't actually stand on it. Give her credit for that. But she kind of swirled her body around.
Everyone that has ever owned a pool table or known someone that owned a pool table is cringing, being like, I'm supposed to do that.
Yeah. There was trouble in New York City, not River City, because if she's stomping on that pool table with her high heels. So just a little fun crossover between this week and last week.
Again, further note that pool tables being around leads to lots of slippery slopes. And look at these people. They're squatting, They are LGBTQ. It's exactly what he warned about. They need a boys band to come make them a bunch of straight white boy band people. Yep.
Capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool.
Exactly. That's exactly what he would have said.
Yep. All right, so that wraps up my notes. With me banging on all the things. Wraps up my notes. It's your turn.
So my first two notes, the Chris Columbus part and the one song I know being in the very first few minutes. Already mentioned those. The next note being that I did not expect this to be a huge rock musical, given the whole like light tone and like very I don't even know how to describe it, like old school of the opening song of. It just it did not match the whole rock vibe of the rest of it for sure. And felt very jarring. But then I remembered the description of the various types of musicals out there and was like, oh yeah, this was supposedly a rock one. So very much fit it. It was very cool and a nice, I don't know if shake-up's the right word, but felt very different from some recent.
It's definitely different than I think any of the musicals we've really watched so far.
Much
Closest
more
to
rockish.
Chicago.
I was going to say Grease, because that was also listed as a rock one, but this felt very much more like a rock musical.
This definitely felt more like a musical than Grease did. Yeah. To me, like I felt like I really got the like Broadway theater musical, what I think of a true musical to be vibes from this than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it helped that this had much less dialogue to really force the whole musical thing on you. But I also felt like this was more of a like hair metal type thing as opposed to like a 1950s style rock type musical. Made a note about most of the words being sung. I did also think this movie was a Christmas movie.
Oh, I meant to make a note about that too. Do we need to add this to our Christmas movie rotation?
I wouldn't hate it. Nice shake-up.
Wouldn't hate it either.
Actually, let's do it. Everyone talks about Die Hard being, a huge Christmas movie.
Yeah, how come we're not talking about
Rent? I don't ever hear anyone talk about Rent being a Christmas movie.
I love it though. Let's add it to our list.
We're gonna start that campaign. You heard it here first, folks.
But also just a quick side note: since 2017, I believe, we have made a Christmas movie calendar every year, and we take all the classic Christmas movies and we've thrown in some of the like Netflix, like cheesy ones. And we've kind of gotten a little looser with it over the last couple of years
and everything.
But there was like 3 or 4 years in a row where every single night in December, every night, we watched a different Christmas movie. It was amazing, but it was also exhausting. So to have a new movie to add to the mix,
yeah,
I'm not mad about it.
I love it. Also, like this felt, because of the whole Christmas like backdrop of everything going on in the beginning, this felt like a American version of Love Actually.
I see it.
There's a bunch of different like combined storylines taking place around Christmas and like love and not love and a bunch of like just
I love
everything
it.
coming together towards the end at Christmas.
And what's his face always has the camera in Love Actually, and Mark always has his camera. Ooh.
Yeah. So I feel like this was a musical take on Love Actually from an American perspective. Even
though the musical came out like 8 years before Love Actually, and this movie came out 2 years after Love Actually. 2003?
Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that general zone.
Anyways. But definitely, like I kept like thinking this, like, especially towards the beginning where there was so much going on that kind of felt like a bunch of like divergent storylines that were suddenly coming together. It's like, this feels very much like Love Actually.
No, but on that note, I was looking up, there's a quote from One Tree Hill where one of the characters is talking about there's like a lot of mixing of the group, and she's like, this is like a love rectangle +1, and I was getting such vibes of that. I was like, well, they were together, but now she's dating her, and like trying to follow everybody's relationships. I was getting that like a lot of crossover. I mean, this was like a love triangle, but like
I guess
overlapping
it's
story.
Like Love Actually plus Friends plus I'll throw Newsies in there because there's a huge Santa Fe reference throughout it, and that's like my controversial favorite song from Newsies.
Very controversial in this house.
The whole musical aspect into it. You put that all in a blender and you get Rent.
We also apologize to all of our rabid fans of this podcast that we did not watch Newsies, because it is actually one of both of our favorite musicals. And I don't know why
it's a packed season, and I think that next season next time we visit musicals, I would love to throw that in there.
Season 4 is not going to be musicals again. Yeah. We will come back to musicals, and Newsies will definitely be in there.
For sure. It's a huge
Stay tuned whenever that rolls back around, because we've never watched it together, have we?
We watched it together once.
I think I might have fallen asleep.
Classic. Next note being there were just a ton of duets in this, and I feel like this is a great soundtrack to sing along with someone else. I think you mentioned that you used to rock out with one of our friends to it.
I feel seen.
That almost all the songs involved two people. There were very few, if any, like soliloquy type things where it was, or solos. It was just a great like singing along thing that I also would just love to hear this more like at karaoke bars, to really rock out to some of these very passionately, just crush them.
The next time that our whole friend group is out at a karaoke situation, I will make that happen for you.
Plus, I mean, you could also just throw on the whole Seasons of Love song and just have the entire bar sing with you. Oh my God.
Can you imagine the magical experience, especially like to give vibes to this, if it was snowing outside and it was like snowing outside and everybody's in a bar together and we're all having a great time as friends, and then you're just like all belting to this song. Oh my God.
Everyone's kind of like rocking together, singing it.
Oh my God. So I love it.
Next note being that Roger gave me some strong Bon Jovi vibes, and he was definitely going for the whole like, rock, whatever type thing. But I just kept thinking like, man,
I can see it.
Really gives me some strong John Bon Jovi vibes.
I definitely see it.
Which also goes back to the Love Actually thing, because he's referenced also in Love Actually. So connections.
It's all connected. Love triangle, love rectangle plus one. Also on the Roger note, when he was in Santa Fe singing on the rocks and whatever, I was like, yeah, you have that New York City vibe, but you could also thrive here. Get you some like cowboy boots and like denim on denim, a lot of leather. He would have done well there.
Also with the whole Santa Fe part, it's the movie taking place in New York City. It's like, did he have to then just fly by himself for like one or two like scenes to film in Santa Fe, or was this filmed in LA and they just drove a little bit outside the city to film this somewhere? Like, I kind of want to know where it actually was filmed. I
would assume it's some kind of movie magic.
Yeah.
But also just so kind of back on that Santa Fe note, we talked about how the timeline of this movie is weird. That, Angel dies on Halloween and he drives all the way to Santa Fe, is there for what, like a day and a half, and decides, nah, I'm going to hop back on a bus and drive all the way back. I don't know.
Yeah, seems
that was a little harder to follow, because I was like, okay, like it's back and then he's back and it's Christmas, but I was like, but wait, Angel died on Halloween and that's not that far between the two. And
also, why Santa Fe? I don't really get that. You're in New York. I mean, if you're going to go somewhere like maybe Memphis or
it's a big dream of those New Yorkers.
Nashville, I guess it's more like country or something, but I don't know. Maybe like go to LA. Just seemed like weird to say Santa Fe.
And he's going to go to Santa Fe and buy this nice guitar and sing on the corner. Like, what are you expecting to get out of Santa Fe?
Yeah, like drove all the way to sell. Yeah, seemed very
like again, LA. Sure, you want to live your music dream? Go to Hollywood. Santa Fe is not believable.
Yeah. Like, now I kind of want to go to Santa Fe just to see what all the buzz is about. I mean, maybe that's what he felt about it.
I'm sure we would eat great there.
Maybe he was just a big like. He loved Newsies, and he was like, I got to figure out what's in Santa Fe. Just
moral of the story is Roger loves Newsies.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I took away from all of this. Mentioned the Friends aspect. Frozen is kind of like ruined for me now, because Idina Menzel was just like very, very like raunchy, like showing her butt.
We saw Elsa's butt.
I saw Elsa's butt. Just full moon. Just very different than what I know her for, mostly from watching Frozen and Frozen 2. But definitely, I knew that she was a theater like actress, singer much before that, but was not expecting the I guess more adult aspect of her character in this, as opposed to just some like, I'm a Disney princess. I'm going to sing about happy things.
Yeah, I mean, I did know she was in this before I saw Frozen. She was also on Glee, and she was also I know she originated one of the roles in Wicked. So like I knew of her before Elsa. It is obviously watching lots of Frozen in our house with a small child. It is very jarring to then see her back at her origin and to see her butt, and it's a lot.
Yeah. Next note being that this was just way darker than I expected. I think I talked about this with the whole like opening song and the song that I know it being so like upbeat and happy. There's a lot of really dark themes that they sung through in this, and like just portrayed with going on with the whole AIDS aspect and like drugs, heroin and all that. Way, way, way darker than I expected.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to watch, but it's also, I think, important that this movie is made, and it represents a lot to a lot of people and covers a lot of stuff that's difficult, but it's also very well done. It shows like the good stuff, but also the bad stuff. And
yeah, gives you the full whole big apple there. Pun very much intended. My last note being that it felt similar to Oklahoma, where just the vast majority takes place in a very, very short time period and then suddenly jumps to like cover the last bit. This felt a bit different, where it's like it wasn't confined to 24 hours in the beginning. It was more like 3 days in the beginning, and then it jumped like throughout a whole year instead of just like a whole like week or two like Oklahoma. But felt kind of similar, where it's like so much takes place in the very takes place in a very short time period for the vast majority of the movie, and then jumps forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know that I made that connection while I was watching it, but now I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Trying to draw connections to every movie we've seen.
That's the point of this, right?
And then my last note being that Mark got an advance of $3,000 from the TV station or whatever.
Buzzline preview for BuzzFeed.
Right, everyone's thinking it.
I was the entire time we were watching it.
And that would be $3,000 in 1989 would be the equivalent of $7,395 today.
So per segment, he would make about $7,000.
Yeah,
good for you, Mark.
$7,400. Yeah, not terrible. Because wondering, I was like, okay, in New York City, how much is $3,000 really going to get you? That's like half a month's rent for that gigantic apartment they had. Which also kind of felt similar to Friends of like, hey,
yes,
we're poor, we're living in New York City in this gigantic freaking apartment.
And I wanted to bring that up too, because I mean, obviously the Friends apartment is far nicer than their very rundown, bare bones, no heat, no electricity.
Nowadays, that's really trendy, having the cool, like, it's really rustic, and we've got this elevator that goes there.
Industrial, there it
is.
But I kept thinking, like, man, that's actually a dope apartment with the windows and the fire escapes. Like, it was a very cool space.
Reminded me of
it needed a lot of TLC.
Reminded me of the apartment in All I Want for Christmas.
Yes.
Which was also a New York City apartment.
New York City. We thought Chicago was everywhere. Apparently it's New York.
I mean, everyone kind of figures like LA and New York City being big movie film locations, if that's what I was looking for. Chicago,
like, I don't know where you're going with
I think
this.
seems a bit different, but yeah, New York City for sure. But I thought that nowadays they would not be able to afford that, even with I think the $8,000 from an advance.
So,
and 2 people living in there.
It sounds like at one point there was almost 4 of them living there, which makes sense because it's a giant apartment. But Benny kept being like, "I'll give you a year, like free rent forever," or free rent. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I don't understand where that's coming from. I also was expecting his character to be in it way more than he was.
Yeah, he disappeared for a long
he was
period
like,
of it.
In, and then he'd be gone forever, and then he'd pop in for a second, and then be gone. I don't know.
Yeah, the whole rent thing, it seemed like it'd be way too good to be true. And I don't know where in New York necessarily this was, but it just seems like not a great investment or deal to make, even if it's your friends, to be like free rent forever. It could be very expensive, just a couple of years down the road.
I don't know. That didn't track. That was a weird storyline for me. His character was kind of weird. Everybody else was great.
Yeah.
No offense to Tate Diggs, because he is very talented, but I don't know. That was weird. But anyways, so glad we saw this. Yeah. Great movie. Glad to have another musical in our belt. And this one just feels like a real musical. Like, we're really into the heart of it now.
Yeah, definitely one more that I've been looking forward to this season. Just of like what I like imagine as being like a musical movie that we must see. It's not a Disney musical.
Definitely. So,
although you can make an argument that it's a Disney musical, given that there's Idina Menzel and Sarah Silverman in it. So,
oh man, if you want to make that argument, go for it. But if you enjoyed this podcast and you would like to follow along more, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram at Culture Night Pod. If you have any thoughts, comments, feedbacks, you can comment on any of the places that we are, or you can send us an email at culturenightpod@gmail.com. And tune in next week to see which musical we're coming with next.
And our thoughts on the movie after we've done more research and our steps on it.
We have a lot of sleeping on it research to do for this week. A lot of things we've already mentioned, and I'm very excited for next week's movie.
Can't wait.
You don't know what it is?
I have no idea. I can't wait.
He's going to love it, and I'm going to lose my mind because I'm obsessed. So with that, we'll see you next week.
Cheers. No cheers.
Cheers.